This is Right On Radio, hating and fearing all that's different.
Welcome to Right On Radio. My name is Daniel Friberg, editor of righton.net and CEO of Arctus. I will be your host tonight, together with my co-host, friend and colleague John Morgan, who is Arctus editor-in-chief, as well as co-editor at righton.net. Glad to have you here, John.
Hello, great to be here.
And the topic of today's program is Sweden, the world capital of cultural Marxism. And to discuss this topic, joining us today, we have two guests. First off, we have Ingrid Conrad, famous Swedish author, journalist and writer, and distinguished senior fellow at the New York-based Gatestone Institute. It's an honor to have you here, Ingrid.
Thank you so much, Daniel. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, the pleasure is all mine, ours, whatever. And we also have Conrad, who is a former left-winger and anti-racist, within quotes, and according to some rumors, also former gay rights activist, who 5 years ago made a U-turn and came over to kind of the good side, and is now co-hosting a popular Swedish podcast called Ingrid and Conrad, focusing on the issues of immigration. So welcome, Conrad.
Hi, Daniel. Thank you. And just want to point out, it's not a rumor if you just made it up. That's not a real rumor, Daniel.
Of course, but yeah. Anyways.
Thank you. Really nice to be here. This is going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, it sure will. And joining us tonight as well, we have a Swedish journalist and political analyst, and none the least, Baron Jonas Geer. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Daniel. I've been on before, and I have to point out to all listeners now that the whole Baron thing, yeah, it's true, but it's not the way I present myself normally. So people don't get the wrong idea. Yeah.
It's basically an inside joke between me and Jonas.
It is, yeah.
Yeah. So anyways, to start this off, I'm sure, since we have an international audience and most of our listeners are probably not familiar with you two, Ingrid and Conrad, although you're quite well known in Sweden, of course. So Ingrid, would you mind giving us the brief story about how you kind of came into this scene and this way of thinking and started realizing something were very wrong with our society of today and something needed to be done.
How did a good girl like you end up
on the dark side? How did I end up on the dark side? Yeah, I've been a journalist all my life. I started in the School of Journalism when I was 18 years old, and I really didn't know much about it, but I've realized after only a few days that this was really my calling in life. And I've always been a very idealistic person. I was dreaming of finding that innocent person in prison and getting him out, and to find the corrupt politicians and make them go away from office and so on. And I found out after just a few years that, first of all, in the mainstream media, you don't have so many opportunities to do these stories because you're supposed to go out writing about a new preschool that opened, and there's a politician visiting your city and just the blah, blah things. But if you really want to do a difference, you can. And I did that. But I realized that many of my colleagues, they were not so interested in these big things, the idealistic things. They just thought it was a nice job, and they made quite good money on it. So I was very alone in this. And I always was, the troublemaker. I didn't want to go when everybody was running in one direction, saying that here is a horrible person. This is a corrupt politician. Let's get him or her. I was always, looking the other way, because I don't like running with the big group. I always want to go my own way. So, I was the person that I did the things that nobody else wanted to do. And so many people got angry with me. And I've always thought that I didn't really fit so good into the mainstream media because I wanted to do things my own way. And then the thing that really woke me up was there was supposed to be a demonstration in Malmö, the Sweden Democrats youth party. And I had read in the newspaper so many times about every time there was a demonstration, there were two. There were the demonstration and the counter demonstration, and they always started to fight each other. And I had the feeling, is this really true? Are both sides really fighting? So I went there to see it myself, and I was shocked because I saw the Sweden Democrats youth. They were standing very quietly, very calm, and they had to wait for 2 hours before they could go their little march around the city center. And the other ones, the leftists, they were throwing things, shouting, very aggressive. And if they could, they would have, they would have killed these young people. Mm-hmm. And so I wrote a story about this on my blog because I couldn't write it for any newspaper. They would never publish it. And I wrote, God beware. How do you say that in English? Gud bevare oss.
God save us from.
God save us.
Yeah, God save us from the anti-racist, and that's where it all started.
So, excellent.
But you must have been aware of this bias before this. I mean, you're talking about writing on your blog, so it can't have been because blogs have only been around for so long, So. And if you started sort of in journalism at the age of 18, you must have been aware of this extreme leftist bias for quite some time. Did it sort of grow on you gradually? I suppose it did. I mean, it's a leading question, I know, but it's an interesting one. It is,
and I mean, I worked many years at a newspaper in Malmö called Kvällsposten, the Evening Post, and I was fighting my bosses all the time because I wanted to do stories about criminality among gypsies, and they always said, no, we cannot write about them. Why not? We have to write about it if it is a problem.
We should say to the listeners that Kvällsposten is the main tabloid in southern Sweden. So it's yeah,
that's true. And but so I knew it. Of course I knew it. And I had been reporting from the demonstrations in Lund in the 90s where people who wanted to put down flowers on the king we had called Charles XII, Carolus Rex, and there were a lot of anti-racists coming in, and they were horrible people. So I knew this all the time, but I hadn't worked with news for many years. So when I wanted to see for myself, I hadn't been to any of these demonstrations for maybe 10 or 15 years. So I wanted to see for myself what was going on, and of course I knew this, but anyway, I was shocked because it was so far from the truth. It wasn't even like they just changed it a bit. They totally made things up that never existed.
Mm. So that was your sort of epiphany at the end of the day, or okay.
Yes, it was. And when I wrote this blog, people, my old colleagues, they went crazy. They said, "What happened to you? Have you gone crazy?" I'm not crazy. I'm writing the truth as I've always been. Yeah, but you can't say these things. Are you absolutely out of your mind? Yeah, and I lost jobs. I lost freelance contracts that I had because I had written that blog.
Yeah, it was the wrong truth.
And that is kind of symptomatical for the Swedish media climate. And this is what happens. And that is what kind of keeps the mainstream journalists in check, because they know that if they write the truth about immigrant crime, if they write the truth about feminism or whatever, anything politically incorrect, basically, they lose their jobs. So they're and they need to eat. So they're kind of, well, the ones that are not like purely evil and ideologically driven to do this horrible disinformation that they are doing, they are doing it out of fear of losing their jobs. And I thank you very much for that brief background story, Ingrid. And over to Conrad.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, how to tell this story? It's kind of amazing to think that just maybe 6 years ago, I was one of these people that we talk about now. These, ideology-driven, brainwashed zombies who try to destroy Sweden. And I was one of those. And it might be strange, but I don't blame myself. I don't feel bad about it because, as you all know, the brainwashing in Sweden it's kind of extreme. I mean, it starts as soon as you go to school, and then the media lies, your friends lies, the government lies, everybody just lies to you, and it's amazing that now finally more and more people are waking up in Sweden. Just I mean, the last few years it's going the right way, and it's going the right way pretty quickly. But for me, it was I was your classical leftist, your classical so-called anti-racist. I was very against the Swedish Democrats, which is the only party in Sweden who even dares to talk about immigration and saying that maybe we should take fewer immigrants in. And
it's very mild in that regard.
Yeah, extremely. It's very, very mild.
I mean, it's very sort of wishy-washy, to be honest.
From a European context, Sweden Democrats would be like a mainstream party in pretty much all normal countries.
They're more or less saying, well, should we really have open borders? Shouldn't we have some kind of control of our borders? That's almost all that they're saying. Anyway, I remember this vividly. I was talking to my boss. I think it was like, I get 2009, 2010. We're having a discussion about this, the immigration policies, and I was just saying, no, you're racist and all this shit. And I think even back then I was somehow a bit had a bit of intellectual honesty in me, and I felt that, oh, come on, Conrad, that's not a real argument. You have to get some real arguments. So I did my homework. I sat down at the internet. And I started just Googling immigration, costs, crimes, because I wanted to prove him wrong. And I could not prove him wrong because a whole new reality just washed over me, much to the help of Flashback, which is a huge Swedish forum where people there talk about anything. And there I could follow people, discussing the problems with immigration. And it was clear for anyone to see who was right and who was wrong. One side just said, well, you're racist, you're a Nazi, you're Hitler, something with gas chambers, oh, fuck, you're a fascist. And the other side was just, he was coming with numbers, with percentages, with costs, with, he had the truth, obviously. And this might be hard to understand for you guys, because I don't think any of you were as leftist as I was. This is a life-changing event, because being a good leftist, it's not just an ideology or something you think. It's you. You are a good person. You're the good, nice person who's fighting the racist. You're a great human being.
It's a religion, basically.
Yeah, it's a religion, and it's not a part of you. It is you. It's how you look at yourself. And me being, I wasn't extreme, but I was among the extreme somehow. So for me, I went like in this just turmoil for 6 months. It was actually a kind of torture. I could see, the reality around me. I could almost, physically see it breaking down, and a new reality was building up. But then I came out on the other side, all evil and nice, all as people would say, all racist, against immigration, all of this. Then I came into contact with a man who calls himself Länsman, and he had a pod, because I didn't know anyone who I could talk to this about, because all my friends and my family, they were leftists, and I was just boiling. I had to get this out of me. But still, in Sweden, you have to be a bit careful. You can't just talk, not even to your family, because actually they might no, we don't want to talk to you anymore, Conrad. So I joined this guy Länsman's show. And it was a great relief for me. I could just 1 hour each week, I could just spout, everything I thought, everything I felt. It was an amazing release for me. And we worked together for, I guess, about 4 years. And it was through that podcast I met Ingrid, luckily. Then me and Länsman and Ingrid joined our pod too. And then me and Länsman parted ways, and Ingrid too. And me and Ingrid started our own podcast. And, here we are.
And for our international listeners, I can tell you that this has now, in a very short time, grown to be one of the most popular pods in Sweden, and it's a really excellent pod.
Thank you, and we had you, I guess, 3 times, 4 times.
Yeah. And
that's why he loves us so much.
Oh yeah.
Exactly. That's the sole reason. Because I didn't listen to any other episodes. No. Of course.
No, we're not huge, but we're growing slowly, and I really think me and Ingrid, we got something going here. We were newly we started doing this daily short just news shows that we talk about the Sweden news, because many people on our side in Sweden, they don't want to listen to the state media. They just can't stand it, and they don't want to read the media at all, so they don't know what's happening in the world. And that's where Ingrid fill a spot, just saying, well, today this has happened.
Exactly. And the alternative media in Sweden, as I've said many times before, is kind of exploding.
Really.
Just because, I was going to say, we were ahead of you.
Oh, yes, you were. Yes, you were.
Antidote.
Way ahead. way ahead.
Absolutely.
Yeah, of course, Jonas, you're always the best.
No.
First of all, with everything.
Listen to Daniel. But then again, the show that you're on, Jonas, we're kind of the same, but also a bit different. It's same, but different. So I think we feel we have different audience. But I know many of the listeners they listen to both. They listen to,
but we'll.
So we're not competing. We're colleagues, or as I like to see it. Yeah.
But is it mainly people who are already sort of converted, as it were, to our point of view, who are tuning in, or is it people who maybe don't think of themselves as being particularly right wing or whatever, who tune in and to get a different perspective? I'm kind of curious.
I would guess that the show Antidote or Motgift that Jonas is on, I guess that's a bit more maybe for the people already know stuff, because Ingrid are trying to get these the newcomers who are a bit more afraid. We try to keep it a bit more soft than Motgift. Am I right here, Jonas?
Yeah, you're exactly right, and it's good that you say it, because we do notice that a lot of sort of our listeners have they've started listening to something which is slightly less radical than
if you want
than what we're doing. So
so you definitely have your slightly different different audiences, although there's always an overlap and
absolutely.
And
I think it's like 80% overlap or something.
Maybe, but still, I think it's very important to have your separate niche and your separate.
No, I think so too. I think it serves its sort of purpose, having this sort of in the situation that we're in, because people are so brainwashed, and it does take a while to sort of get out of this grip that. Political correctness, or whatever you want to call it, has on you. So you need to liberate yourself from that gradually.
But it is difficult, isn't it? I mean, I am very, very aggressive against Islam, and I think that's the worst totalitarian ideology the world has ever seen. And I don't have any patience with people saying to me, can you please not be so angry about Islam? Couldn't you try to be more positive? You could say that, well, I hope that they will reform Islam. Maybe there is a chance that people will. And I say, we don't have the time for that. If they want to change Islam, so be it. Very good. I would applaud. But can you please do it in the Middle East? Yeah. Not here.
Not in Sweden. It's going the other way.
To be honest, I don't really care what they do with Islam as long as they stay out of Europe. I'm perfectly happy. I mean, they can live their lives.
I totally agree. But I can't, try to be more soft against Islam just to lure more people into the podcast or something like that. So, people say that you have to be so aggressive, Ingrid. Can't you be a little more, I don't know, feminine and sweet? And so that's really not my style. Not when it comes to these things.
And just for the international viewers, I mean, mine and Ingrid's pod in Sweden, I mean, in the way Sweden media, our pod is extreme. I mean, you can't compare it to anything else.
We can't see you, Conrad. It's international listeners. Sorry? To be. I said it's international listeners. You said international viewers.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, not listeners. God damn it. I mean, we're not doing some kind of mainstream pod. I mean, we're talking bad about Islam, and that's unheard of in Sweden. No paper would ever dare to do that, not even slightest, because the Muslims are our friends and they're here to give us the wonderful whatever. So even our podcast, this is pretty. We try to keep it pretty cool. It's seen as obviously Nazi, right-wing extremists, and all this.
And our pod also brings up the question of Jewish power and influence. So
that's probably the main difference. But
can I just ask something?
No, John, you can't say anything during this entire program. I'm just kidding. Please go ahead, John.
What I was just curious. I understand why you would, especially in Sweden, why you would want to. Question Islam very aggressively, like you're saying. Although the only problem I personally have with that approach is that I meet some people who think that immigration is okay as long as it's from non-Muslim sources. And speaking personally, I don't want a million Hindus or, from India, or a million, African Christians coming to Europe as well. I mean, I realize in some ways they wouldn't be as problematic, but they would still be changing the culture and causing problems.
I agree, John. I totally agree. I think we have two big problems. The first one is mass immigration. It doesn't matter really where they come from. Mass immigration is always bad for a country. And then we have the Muslim problem. And both of these are very important. And we have to talk about it because, of course, I think Muslim immigration is more bad than Christian immigration. But it's, we can see in Södertälje, the city south of Stockholm, where they have had, I don't know how many, but they have a lot of Syrian people in Södertälje, and they're all Christians, not all, but almost all.
Well, I think they're called Syriac, I think, in
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. Syrian is people from Syria. But,
okay, yeah. Okay, I mean the Christians.
Yeah.
And they had huge problems. I mean, they had this mafia, this mob going on. They have a lot of crime, and they had so many, big trials that has cost the Swedish taxpayers loads and loads of money because they are they are Middle Eastern people. It doesn't really matter so much if you're Christian or Muslim. If you're born and bred into this Middle East mentality, it doesn't matter. It doesn't make a world of difference if you're Christian or Muslim.
Mm-hmm. No, but I mean the Assyrians or Syriacs, whatever you want to call them, they more or less rule Södertälje. That's right, but they're also in Norrköping, in Örebro. They tend to they've taken over most of the establishments in the old town of Stockholm, which is sort of European gem. Really, so I mean, this is in that way, because of their ethnic cohesiveness and all of that, they are a very powerful people, and they've taken over very much of the sort of underworld in Sweden today, and they're Christian to boot.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the problem. I mean, we have a lot of problems directly related to Islam. We have, bathhouses with separate. We have with women and men. What do you say? Well, with men and women separated. We have, a lot of problems with Muslim extremism in the suburbs and Gothenburg, where I live. It's called the European headquarters for IS or Daesh or whatever you want to call it. So we have a lot of problems directly related to Islam, obviously. But as Ingrid said, the main problem is immigration, the mass immigration that we have from these MENA countries. And I mean, the problem is also, I mean, you can blame immigrants, and obviously it's immigrants' fault, but the main problem is with our politicians who allow this. I mean, it's a genocide of the Swedish people. Me and you talk about this a lot of times. Why do they want to kill us? Because we have so many politicians. They come up with these new rules. Immigrants should get some place to live before Swedes can. We have a mass amount of money just poured into this. We're talking billions and billions and billions yearly in direct losses just relating to immigration. So the main problem might not be Islam, but it's mass immigration, obviously. But still, in this, I mean, a lot of the problems we see are also directly related to Islam, and that's why me and Ingrid talk about it so much.
There is one big problem that. The Swedish mentality of being very nice, not being very aggressive, not being very confrontative. We like to, the consensus culture that we have. That is a real big problem when it comes to people from the Middle East. Let's just talk about them as people from the Middle East. Because if you want them to have any kind of respect for you, you have to be very strong, very strong. Yeah. You can phone them up, for example, like we did some imams, and be really aggressive and say, "I am dead scared of Islam. Why are you in our country? This is Sweden. This country belongs to the Swedes. Why are you here? Why are you doing this?" And then they get all, yeah, you're right. Of course, it's your country. Sweden is for the Swedes, of course. They get all soft when you talk to them like that. But we do it the other way, and they see us as sissies.
Yeah, weak
when
people.
we say, "Oh, you must come first. Oh, we don't want to offend you. Oh, you want some more money? So, oh, yes. So then they look down at us and they say, "These people, they don't even care about their country. Why shouldn't we take it from them?"
Yeah.
No, but I mean, this is it.
Exactly.
But you have to sort of put this in perspective with the whole sort of so-called cultural revolution in the West from the mid '60s, basically, and onwards, when men have become feminized and you've got rampant feminism and what have you, and this is not targeting. And at the same time, you're sort of having this strange mass immigration. I mean, what prompted people to sort of open our borders and etc.? I mean, we have to, I think, go to the root of the problem. They didn't make it to neither to Sweden nor to any of the other European countries on their own. I mean, sometimes you blame these things on if you talk about, for example, the UK or France, where it started out, you say that, they were colonial powers. So obviously that's where it started. But the funny thing is that they had been colonial powers for hundreds of years, both of them. And, well, especially the UK. But it's only after the demise of their empires that
the mass immigration
their former colonials start flooding into Europe. I mean, that's a very, very funny phenomenon, which has not been discussed enough. It's not been analyzed hardly at all. It should be.
Well, I know that...
sorry.
I was going to say, if an Indian goes to England, as a former colony and today part of the British Commonwealth, I believe that not only can he live in England without requiring a visa, but he can even vote in the elections there. So I doubt that was the case even during the period of British rule of India, although I haven't checked, but.
I don't think he can vote in the elections today. Actually, I think he would have to. I think that has changed. But
okay.
But I mean, at the same time, it doesn't change the fact that mass immigration started after colonialism sort of dismantled itself.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or imperialism did. Yeah.
That's our own fault. Why don't we protest when people talk about colonization or the Crusades or whatever those stupid
trade
excuses are? Yeah. Why? Because first of all, we don't know anything about it. People know nothing about it, so they can't even defend themselves. Even if they wanted to, they can't, because they too believe that the Christians were horrible when they went down to Jerusalem to take away what the Muslims had stolen from the beginning. That was it's so horrible, and because the school is so bad, because people get brainwashed all the time, and it's really sad to see. So I think we who know some things, we have a big we must do this. I mean, I often, when people ask me, why do you do this? It's dangerous and you don't make any money. I do that now, but for many years I was so poor. I couldn't imagine. Why do you do this? And people hate you. And then I quote Astrid Lindgren, the
Pippi
Longstocking author, and she says in one of her books, The Brothers Lionheart, I think it's called in English, when the big brother has to go out to kill some dragon or something, and the little brother says, "Why must you do it? I want to be with you, my brother." And he says, there are some things you just have to do. If you don't do it, you're just a little shit.
Yeah. I mean, and the question is, and the question is, how could you not do it? I mean, all these people who are not doing, who are, I mean, as things are in Sweden now, you have to actively, just close your eyes to not see the truth. I mean, 5 years ago, or maybe 3 years ago, you could just kind of blame the media and, well, people are fooled. But today, I mean, it's everywhere. We have asylum homes everywhere. We have gypsies on the street everywhere. People have to actively just ignore this.
Yeah, I mean, it's a moral obligation to react to this, of course. And besides, I mean, the tide is turning, and finally, it's a lot of things are going in our direction, and it's actually possible to make money out of this. I'm a primary example. I make lots of money out of this, although I didn't for the first maybe 20 years. And also, as a bonus, I get hated by the Swedish left, which is something I really love. It's my personal goal to be the most hated person within the Swedish left and mainstream.
You're getting there. You're getting there.
Yeah. I think so, yes. And so for me, it's like a win-win. I couldn't wish for anything better than doing this. And so
oh, come on, Daniel, you're not being serious now. You're not making lots of money just from profiting.
Well,
yeah, I wondered about.
Don't call him out on it. We know it's not true. So
it's of course a question of definition. I mean, it's not millions yet, but I think we'll get there soon enough.
Where did this?
I don't make shit just for the record. So.
but I mean, our revenues are improving, of course, and of course I don't do this radio for the money, because we don't earn anything from this podcast and from writeon.net really yet. But I'm 100% sure we will at some point in the future. Not that is the primary motivation, of course.
I mean, look.
I think we're all.
I mean, we're all.
Yeah. Okay, Jonas, please.
Yeah, we've all sacrificed a lot, I think, you know, I used to write in establishment papers as well a while ago. I wasn't sort of a journalist in the way that Ingrid was, but I've written on the cultural and political pages of all the major Swedish papers. So and I've been on television and radio and etc. I mean, national television and national radio several times. But you know, you're not in this for the money. You do it, just as Ingrid said, because you sort of have to, and as Conrad says, and as you say, Daniel, because you know your conscience doesn't allow you to do otherwise. You know,
exactly. And that should always, of course, be the primary motivator. But my point here is that we should kind of, at some point at least, stop portraying ourselves as kind of losers who don't make any money. Because I don't believe that will be true. I mean, within the next couple of years, personally, I live a perfectly nice life, and I haven't suffered immensely from being politically incorrect and having a high political profile within Sweden.
Well, not lately, Daniel, but you have in the past, haven't you?
Well, my career hasn't actually been very much affected. I actually left a pretty promising career as a management consultant and so forth, and I've had lots of well-paid jobs in Sweden, which I kind of left voluntarily to do something more important when I started working with Arctus. So but of course you're perfectly right that I've suffered, especially from the Swedish media, because they haven't been always nice to me, or ever. Basically, they've been very kind of mean to me. But the point is that I don't really care. I view it as the biggest compliment you can get when some leftist rag in Sweden writes something bad about you. It's the ultimate proof that you're doing something very good.
Yeah.
So, nowadays I can look at it like that way too. But you know, in the beginning, I thought it was not nice at all being called a racist. I mean, even if I knew I'm not a racist, and I'm a nice person, and I actually never judge anyone because of the color of their skin, the color of their hair, their eyes, or not even what religion they have. Because I take any person. Who are you? Show me. What kind of person are you? Are you a good person? Okay, that's fine. Even how you look or what religion you have. If you just don't try to, you know, put it on me or society. But I thought it was the first year or so, I thought it was really, really horrible. All those people calling me a racist and a xenophobe and Islamophobe and all sorts of horrible things. And then you wake up one day and you say, why would I get sad about that? I mean, I know I'm not, and all my friends know I'm not. So why should I be sad because they are lying about me? But you have to come to that conclusion. It doesn't matter if people say it to you. You have to find it to be true in your heart.
Yeah, but I mean, it's still tough, and still in Sweden, I mean, when the Swedish Democrats are the biggest party in many polls, still this is like a wet blanket over the minds of people here. You don't want to be called a racist. You don't want to be called a racist, and that's why some people still don't dare to complain about the fucking gypsies, they are everywhere and they're pretty aggressive, and people still, oh well, they're poor. I try to give them as much money as they want. They see their own. They see elderly homes being closed down, and then they see this, well-fed young men who are so-called immigrants moving in there, and people don't complain because you don't want to be called
coming
racist.
with their iPods and
and this is going to be I can't explain it, but since I'm here in Sweden, I can understand it. But this is going to be a really weird thing to explain to the next generation. Why didn't people do anything?
I think the bottom line here is that you all sort of you come to this awakening because that's really what it's about, and it can sometimes be very painful. But you do that at different stages in life, and that is very sort of individual. Some people come to it when they're in their 40s, others do it when they're in their teens, some in their 20s. I mean, I think to me it's a bit in between. It was a gradual process from my teens to my 20s. In Daniel's case, I know it's definitely in his teens. For you and Ingrid, it's a bit later in life, and it's a process that how should I put it? It's very difficult to put a sort of general standard for it because it doesn't exist. It's just yeah.
Well, to me, sorry for interrupting you there.
No, sure.
And Jonas, but to me, what the Swedish media and cultural elite believes about me or you or anyone else kind of criticizing the cultural Marxist insanity going on immigration and so forth. For me personally, I don't care at all. I view the Swedish media climate and the Swedish political climate and political landscape as sort of a reality TV show because it's so ridiculous. I couldn't care less. They can pretty much write anything they want about me, and I will just laugh about it.
But that's very untypical, isn't it, of you? I mean, it's very, very un-Swedish, if you want to call it that. I mean, people they care a lot. They care so much that
because they are so scared about what their neighbors and family and friends will think of them if they are called bad names by the inferior people working for the mainstream media and so forth. But they have to kind of change their mindset, and that is something I have been kind of propagating for a while now. Just switch mindset, come over to my mindset, because that's obviously the superior one. View it as a stupid reality TV show and don't care what they call you, just speak out. And the more of us that kind of comes over to this way of thinking, the quicker we can put an end to this madness, basically.
No, but I mean, Sweden in that case has been also quite special. It's been a sort of semi-socialist country. We must say that as well. So it's kind of I don't know. And the mentality still is very strange. I mean, even though I'm born and bred Swedish, I've lived in the UK for 10 years, but I am a Swede, but it's kind of North Korea light, really, that sort of prevails mentality.
Yeah, actually, and in one way, I mean, this might be unfair to you compare Sweden to North Korea, but in one way, I think in Sweden it's worse in one way, because I don't know much about North Korea because nobody does, because it's such a close border. But I'm pretty sure that people there, they know that they're being oppressed. They're pretty sure that they're being oppressed, and they're pretty sure they hate the government, but they don't dare say anything about it. In Sweden, people don't even know that they're oppressed. They think they're being fed the truth. And I mean, the talk here in Sweden among many people are, well, the whole world is is racist and the whole world have a inhumane immigration policy. It's just poor Sweden. That's well, not the poor, the great Sweden. We're the only one who's a great and brave and true and fine and nice.
Just think about our government now. It's really, really stupid prime minister, Stefan Löfven. I mean, he keeps on talking about how Sweden is the only country, Sweden and Germany, the only country who has taken responsibility in this migrant crisis. For God's sake. Sweden and Germany are the most irresponsible countries. The other countries have been thinking about their own country, their own people, how to survive this. Yes. And he goes on saying, we can't do it anymore. We have to close the borders because we're the only ones who took this responsibility, and now we can't do it anymore.
But the thing is,
he is kind of the prime example that we're not living in a real society. We're living in some sort of reality TV show.
He's a retard. I mean, and that's not being. I don't want to offend any real retards here, but I mean, he's obviously have really low IQ. He can't talk. He can't speak. Sorry, Jonas. I know you have been retarded. No, just kidding. But I mean, it might. This is really hard to explain to international listeners, because I mean, our prime minister, he's such. I mean, if you hear him talk for just stupid. 1 minute, he is obviously stupid. I mean, he's obviously stupid. He doesn't know where he is.
He's an idiot, but I mean, let's not.
He doesn't know where he is.
He has an IQ of like 85 or something, probably. But anyways, this is a really high energy conversation, and it's really entertaining. But we need to stick with the program here and go to break. So we'll continue this after a short music break. I think we have to provide some variety to our music breaks, and for that purpose, we will be listening to one of my absolute favorite music groups called Triari, and the name of the song is Europa.
Oh, good one.
Or actually, this is Europa, I guess the proper title is. Anyways, let's listen to it and enjoy it, and see you shortly.
This is my silver sun.
So I hope everyone enjoyed the music as much as all of us did. Let's continue with this super interesting discussion. John, I think you have some questions from an outsider's perspective about Sweden. So,
yes, I mean, we have all the same trends in the U.S. That you have in Sweden. It's just that they haven't been taken to quite the same extreme, which I would probably attribute to something about the American character. I won't go into that now, but I guess the question that first comes to my mind, though, is that I understand where this came from in America, but Jonas kind of hinted at this earlier, but he didn't really go all the way in discussing it. I'm just curious, how did this arise in Sweden, of all places, and why has it taken such a dramatic, kind of insane form there that persists all these years?
I think if you go back, sort of, if you look at the, from a history of mentality kind of perspective, it's very complex, and we shouldn't go there. I mean, it does have to do with the Reformation and all of that. I'm absolutely certain of that. Sweden having been sort of a monolithic state in that sense, and etc. It's hard to say, but these sort of recent trends, why political correctness, if you will, has taken such a strong hold of the Swedish elites and also much of Swedish society, and why Swedish society is so conformist, I couldn't say, and we don't have sort of really time to discuss that. But one thing that I can say is that Sweden has completely, Swedish academia and thereby sort of Swedish journalism and what have you, then much of society has been informed from America. We've been very, very Americanized in that sense. I mean, Americanization is not just about, rock music and Hollywood films. Well, I mean, Hollywood films, of course, is part of the picture, but that's partly another matter. But definitely these ideas have sort of come from America, even though they might not stem from America.
Well, why was it so pronounced in Sweden, the American influence? When I mean, we actually, after World War II, America occupied half of Europe, but we never had any bases in Sweden. So why was it so dramatic there?
It's very, very difficult to say. But I would say, though, indeed, and I think all of the other Swedes on the show would probably agree with me that, Sweden has been one of the most Americanized, if you will, countries in the world.
And before I hand over the word to Ingrid and Conrad, I think, the whole part of Western Europe, including Northern Europe, of course, has been under some sort of American cultural occupation for the past half century and more than that, 70 years or more. And Sweden is, even though we didn't participate in the Second World War, we're of course part of the same cultural sphere. I mean, before 1945, Germany was kind of the cultural center of Western Europe and pretty much all of Europe. But post 1945, America has been the cultural center of all of Western and Northern Europe. And Sweden, I guess we're more accepting to outside influences because of the fact, for example, that we haven't been to any war for more than 200 years, and therefore we have a weaker national identities. We are more susceptible to outside influence.
No, but
Can I disagree on that?
Yeah, of course, you're allowed to disagree.
Yeah, because I will tell you, I had an epiphany when I had the flu a couple of weeks ago. I had a very high temperature, and I was, sort of for 2.5 days. I was just, I was sleeping. I was going up just to get some water and some pills to get the temperature down for 2.5. And I had this, these dreams and had brilliant thoughts. I think myself, and this is now what I came up with. people think that Sweden is not a nationalistic country, that we are not patriots, because we never talk about it. But actually, I will tell you what it's like. Swedes are maybe the most patriot, the most nationalistic people in the world. But to us, it's so obvious that Sweden is the best country in the world. Why would anyone say anything else? It's obvious to anyone. So when they come here, when people come here, they will totally fall in love with everything Swedish. And they will look at us with admiration and say, wow, you are so clever. You created this wonderful country. And they will become so happy and they will become just like us. And that, I think, is the reason that we lost Sweden, because we were so convinced that we are the best people in the world, with the best country in the world. How could anyone disagree with that?
Yeah, no, it's absolutely true. I mean, I wrote that myself in the late 90s, actually, that you know, it's a kind of, yes, I did. It's kind of, no, it's a kind of inverted.
Fever?
No. It's a kind of inverted national pride that we, you know, we pride ourselves with not being chauvinist. So
Not being proud, because that's not the Swedish way to be proud.
No, so we are the best in the world.
Yeah, we're going to say it
because of that, and we are the envy of the world because we are so tolerant of everything else, which is of course ludicrous, and it's very self-harmful, if you will. I remember a guy who used to write at Motpol, which was a site run by Daniel. It still is, but this guy is not around there anymore. But still, he wrote, and this is something that's stuck in my mind, that, you know, we grew up thinking, we were taught that, and this guy had spent a lot of time in South America, and he said, we grew up being taught that, you know, in a couple of years, maybe a couple of decades, countries like, say, Colombia are going to be like Sweden because, you know, we are the beacon of the world. But it's probably the other way around. You know, Sweden is turning into what Colombia looks like.
Yeah, that's actually very, very interesting and funny kind of.
It's a good observation, and it's good. You know, it's very well put.
And the fact is that Sweden is, on the contrary, turning out to be the kind of warning example for the rest of Europe.
Exactly, and that might be the positive thing about this. You know, the horrible crisis that Sweden is in right now. It might be a deterrent for other countries. And already, I mean, we have Denmark. You know, the Denmark politicians are pointing at Sweden and saying, "Hey, do you want your country to look like this? Look at Sweden. We have to stop immigration somehow. Otherwise, we will be like Sweden." And people are listening to this because they can see what really happens if you just let the immigration loose and let the whatever you want to call it.
Same thing in Norway, and I mean,
and
in America, maybe
in all of Eastern Europe and Central Europe as well. I mean, Sweden is the most warning example.
Which is kind of funny because, sorry, Daniel, but say 20, 30 years ago, people looking to Sweden as an example because then it was a good state. You know, we had good schools, good welfare, good everything. We were example, and now again we can be another kind of example. So Sweden is always the example, isn't it?
We're always the extreme.
Yeah.
If we can't be extremely good, we can be extremely bad.
Yeah. Well, let's just make a mark in history.
That's something that still puzzles me, though, because all of you seem to agree that you know, where this extreme political correctness and so forth began in Sweden was due to American influence, but it's been taken to such an extreme degree. I mean, there was an article I wrote a few years ago about an incident where there was some official event in Sweden against female genital mutilation, and a Swedish minister was present, and they had a performance artist in a cake. It was done up to look like an African woman.
Yeah.
And this Swedish minister was cutting the cake, and this quote unquote performance artist inside the cake was actually screaming as though, you know, he was being hurt.
Yeah.
I mean, I couldn't believe it when I heard about it. I mean, if any American politician did something like that, I mean, they would be laughed out of office. I mean, they wouldn't be able to. Yet it seems like this kind of thing is happening all the time.
And to be perfectly clear about this was kind of a trolling
from the
event.
artist.
From the artist.
But she went along with it.
She left
the politician.
Actually, it was a male artist, and I'm in the same
male black artist, by the way.
Yeah, a male black.
But the politician was a woman.
Yeah, and all of them, of course, went along with it because they are so politically correct that they couldn't
They don't know how
resist.
to handle it.
No, exactly, and it was really entertaining for us. And I have to mention that I'm in the same Facebook group as this same artist, who's actually a very funny person because he likes
the hate club.
Yeah, it's a hate club. The most awesome Facebook group ever. It kind of made Facebook entertaining for me again.
And you're telling us you're not gay, Daniel.
Yeah. I truly.
Have you said that?
Anyway, I think that's kind of superfluous to kind of say because it's obvious that I'm not. But
it is. I'm only joking. So yeah.
Yeah, that's okay.
Maybe let's explain just since we're talking about it. The thing here is there's a black woman made into a cake, and this artist called Makoni Linde had these politicians just wandering and cutting out the cake, and he made it so that when they cut the cake, they cut it out of her genitalia, and then he was lying under the cake screaming, "Oh my God! Oh please no!" Things like this, and the Swedish politicians they just they couldn't handle it, so they just
that would. I mean, American politicians would just leave. I mean,
what the
they'd
fuck
have to do that
stuff?
for their political survival.
Yeah, I mean, of course. But this is, and I guess
the way to survive in Sweden is to not let anybody know that you don't know what to do. So you just keep on with a happy face.
Yeah, you
But
just go along.
The question is, how did things get like that? Much further even than what we have in the U.S.
Yeah, I mean, that's the question, isn't it? But I guess as I think it was Jonas who said it before, that we have a very weak sense of nationality here. We have politicians saying that they say out loud. I mean, they say it just they spell it out. There is no Swedish people. There is no Swedish people. There is no Swedish culture. Our last prime minister said that. Let's see if I can translate this. The only thing that is really Swedish is the barbarianism. Everything else is foreign. Our highest leader says this to our people, and if you hear this, year after year after year, people really start to believe it.
I don't think so. Let me come back to that. No, we don't believe it. That's why we didn't, kick these politicians out, because it's like we all know that we are the best. Okay, let them talk like that. Maybe it's good for the immigrants because they're not so sure of themselves. We can take it. We are like the older sibling who always gets to hear, you are older, you are smarter. Don't fight with your little brother or little sister. That's how Swedes look at themselves and the immigrants. We are the older ones. We understand it. We can say to them that, we don't really have any culture because we all know that we have, and they know it, and everybody knows it. We are the best in the world.
Yeah,
I'm not sure we do actually, because if we would have, I mean, we would have had some resistance to what's going on, and obviously we don't. But
I see a point here. I think that's part of the truth. Actually, I really think you have a point here, because Swedes are so full of themselves, so we're so much better than other people.
It used to be like that, but I'm not sure that's the case anymore. I don't think you can.
But I agree. I just mean that the reason why we didn't do something a long time ago is that we were so convinced that we were the best. Now, from having heard this for 20 or 30 years, now a lot of Swedes, and especially young people who wasn't raised with this "we are the best in the world" mentality, they start to doubt themselves and to doubt Sweden. Maybe there is no such thing as Sweden. Maybe there is no such thing as Swedish culture. Maybe we've all been, stupid to think that. And so it is changing.
Yeah, and I think unfortunately many young people have lost the concept or sense of the Swedish people.
Yeah, and the Swedish history. I mean, we have
Also, you have to kind of differentiate between the Swedish cultural elite and the general Swedish population as such. I truly believe that the Swedish cultural elite still believe that Sweden is the best country in the world. We are like a moral superpower, which is a totally gay and stupid concept. But the general population do definitely not believe that, because they have been fed this cultural Marxist guilt propaganda for so long. I mean, we're responsible for colonization. We're for all the horrible colonialism.
Just because you're part of the West? How does that work?
We had a small island for like 50 years.
South Africa in the West Indies, yeah.
Yeah, and also because we did not prevent the Holocaust, even though we were not really involved in the Second World War, it was our moral obligation for some reason to kind of intervene.
Never forget the trains. Never forget the trains.
Yeah, and my favorite example is I forgot his name now. We have the chairman of the like Afro Swedes whatever. I think he still goes out handing out leaflets claiming that us Swedes we have to pay some kind of tax to black people because the Swedish mining might have been used in chains for slaves like 150 years ago. And we have to do our part. We have to pay. And people take this guy seriously. This is a guy, he lives on my money, on tax money.
And actually,
that's just amazing.
The funniest thing of all.
And his sister, by the way, was a minister in the Swedish government.
What is it? You know it?
I can't remember it off the top of my head. Sorry.
But never mind.
Right.
Absolutely what?
Nyamko Sabuni was a minister.
Yeah.
She's the sister of this guy.
Yeah. But the silliest thing of all in this is that the Korean adoptive kind of extremist racialist in Sweden, Tobias Hübinette, who by the way, is bragging about being the primary suspect of a murder case where a young Swedish guy was murdered because of wearing a Swedish flag. But this guy is actually been given a platform within the Swedish establishment. And his latest article, which I actually laughed out loud when I read it, claimed that the Swedes are guilty of the slave trade because on the slave ships they actually ate Swedish herring. According to him, I don't know what kind of proof it.
Nobody would eat Swedish herring.
Oh my God.
Used to it. Yeah, I mean, this is just. I know, John. I don't know how this sounds to you. If it sounds, like something we just made up, but
no, I mean,
weirder
I've
in Sweden
with
than
Daniel and other Swedes for several years now, so I know how insane things have gotten.
But could I just ask you? I mean, in America, if you call yourself a patriot, would you be just deemed a racist then, or is that still a good thing to
No, of course not. You have to say that, whether you're a liberal or a conservative or whatever you are. You have to say. Well, you have to. The American identity is about we're special. We're God's chosen nation to lead the world and everything. So you have to start from the premise that you're a patriot because you believe in America, but you want America to be doing X. That's how it works there.
But I mean, to be honest, John, I mean that's not too far from what we're describing here. That this kind of sort of inverted sense that we are the most sort of progressive, most tolerant country in the world.
John, I mean, you can't call yourself a patriot in Sweden. I mean, if you want to have your house not burned down.
No, because I mean, but I mean, those are mainly sort of cultural differences. But you certainly couldn't talk about race in America, for example. And have a political career. I mean, it's.
Talk about race, it's a big thing in
race.
America.
I'm not sure. You say you can't discuss race in America, Jonas?
No. What I'm saying is, I mean, look, someone like Trump hasn't really talked about race at all, has he?
Well, the politicians don't, but I mean, it's I mean, the American culture is obsessed with race, actually.
And it's not a stigmatized concept in the U.S. I mean,
it is for whites, of course.
I think it is.
But they use the word quite frequently, even if you're a leftist or a rightist. The word race still exists. They don't deny the existence of race like we do in Sweden. And also, before just handing over the word to Jonas here, who's I can feel you're very eager to say something, but anyways, Donald Trump has actually, maybe he hasn't said it in any of his speeches. I watched most of them, but I might have missed some single speech or something. But he has at least retweeted a couple of tweets about the black on white crime and so forth. So he has at least brought the topic up.
All right. Yeah. No. I mean, fair enough. But I mean, I do try and keep in touch with what's going on in the US. I listen kind of regularly to the political cesspool, and James Edwards is a friend of mine, I can say today, and I read the likes of Jim Goad and etc. And the stuff that they report from the US, what's going on in the newspapers, in academia, and etc. It's as crazy as anything that you would get out of Sweden, even though perhaps the sort of general political landscape is not as because, like I said, Sweden is such sort of like a monolithic society. It's very much la pensée unique, as the French say. It's just one thought. Yeah,
you can't really judge America by academia and the newspapers. I admit, I used to attend one of the most left-wing universities in the U.S., the University of Michigan, and yeah, you probably could find everything there that you've talked about in Sweden. But among the general American public, you don't see political correctness as firmly entrenched as you do in Sweden, I would say.
No. And this is what I'm saying. I don't think it's because of Sweden being such a monolithic society. But tell me, John, isn't there a huge difference between, different parts of America?
Oh, of course. Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's commonalities, of course, but I mean, if you were to compare, New York to
Texas, maybe.
Well, Texas, or even remote parts of the Midwest, or even places on the West Coast. I mean, yeah, they're very, very different.
But could I, John? And now I heard like a half a second of silence, so I'm gonna try it. If you could you just ignore that Daniel Friberg, and I guess you read a lot of media. How is Sweden viewed, from American mainstream perspective? Is it still this this fantasy about the amazing country in the West with their socialist democratic it's nobody's poor? And I mean, I heard I was in America last year and people just had good things to say about Sweden, and that kind of worried me because I really want to Sweden, if it can't be anything else, I want it to be this example of bad things happen if you let immigration just run wild.
Well, it's very much divided along political lines. I mean, if you talk to liberals, especially more extreme liberals in the U.S., they'll still hold up. Well, they usually say the Scandinavian countries, but usually what they're mainly thinking of is Sweden, as an example that we should be aspiring to. I mean, I think even Bernie Sanders recently said something about Sweden being, the model he would use for the U.S. But if you talk to people on the right, it's just the opposite.
Yeah.
Sorry?
Yeah, sorry. But I'm guessing the people who look up to Sweden, they don't know anything about Sweden today. I guess they're talking about Sweden 10, 15, 20 years ago.
No, I mean, of course, Europe in general, but especially the smaller countries. I mean, Americans have very little knowledge about the world outside of America at all. Yeah. And when it comes to, the smaller countries of Europe, virtually nothing. So, yeah, it's just the stereotype that they're going by. But if you talk to people, conservatives or people on the alternative right or whatever in the U.S., I mean, they have a more realistic view. I mean, when I've commented to when I go to conferences, alternative right conferences in the U.S. and mention to people that I work with Swedish colleagues, they say, what, they're right-wing Swedes? Like semi-sarcastically, but they actually don't even, believe it. So, no. But yeah, they kind of understand. I mean, there was even, I think it was Mitt Romney during the 2012 election. I mean, he didn't refer to Sweden specifically, but he said Europe was a demographic disaster. Conservatives are aware of these things.
Yeah.
And Donald Trump, he talks about Sweden all the time.
Yeah, it does, and one even more reasons to like him.
Yeah, I just want to make one thing very clear for our international listeners, not viewers. Sorry about that. Sweden is failing. I mean, in the most, in every way you can think of. The school is failing. The military is not failing because there is no military. The police is failing. Everything is failing. And we were looking at, I mean, in a few years, Sweden will have, well, I can't say if it's going to be a civil war or whatever it's going to be, but Sweden is failing in every way you can think of. And that's why me and Ingrid and Daniel, and we are trying to turn this around. But if somebody's trying to tell you that, well, Sweden is a good country, it's this and that, they're lying. They are lying because the media is lying, the government is lying, because obviously the government is lying because they don't want to say that, well, our country is failing. But let nobody tell you differently. Sweden is failing, and the proofs are out there everywhere. And if you want to know how it's failing, just well, I guess it's going to be hard if you're an American, but Sweden is failing in every way possible. I mean, we have nothing left soon, and let's, Ingrid, what do you think? 5 years, maybe 10 years, if people if things are going as they keep going in 10 years. Let's say in 20 years, if things are going to keep going as they're going now, in 20 years there's not going to be Sweden anymore. And that's
the only reason I think that Sweden hasn't collapsed yet is that we have a very strong country, and we have people who work very hard, and Swedish people, they work very hard and they pay taxes without there's not so many ways to get out of paying your taxes.
And we're talking 70 to 80% taxes.
Yes, and people do. So that's why the country is still holding up, but we see it in so many, just as Conrad said, military, the police, the whole justice system, the care of the elderly, the school, the care of the small children, healthcare, everything. Every day we read horrible things from all these different, things in society, and it will be a lot of small collapses, not one big collapse where the country is not at all working anymore. But you will see small collapses, and one day there will be so many that the country is not working. Sweden will be a failed state.
Yeah. And this is true. I mean, just imagine. That's why me and Ingrid and again, Friberg is helping very much. Just imagine living in a state that is actually failing. I mean, this is like watching a train wreck in super slow motion, and still a lot of Swedes are not. They don't know though the trains aren't going to crash. No, it's okay. Let's just keep going. And it's a really weird feeling. And the weirdest thing, Ingrid, I think you can agree with me on that, is for you and me, this is normal, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Yeah, we live in a country that is failing. Yeah, we live in a government that is, trying to eradicate us, who hates us, who tries to kill us. I mean, it's a really weird feeling.
Yeah, it is.
It certainly is.
There was one thing I wanted to say, which is just that, as an American, I've been to Sweden 3 times now. I've spent several months there, and I can definitely see all of the problems that all of you are describing, and I absolutely know that it's real. But I have to say that even beneath all of that, I mean, I can still tell that Sweden is a wonderful country, and the Swedish people are wonderful. And I really hope that you guys are successful in reviving it, because
it
would be a real loss to Europe, both culturally and economically and in every other sense.
Yeah. And I talked to a lot of people. I'm so glad that through this podcast, much thanks to Ingrid, I've been coming into contact with a lot of people. And I mean, the Swedes are finally waking up, and I meet people every day. You can actually see the fire in their eyes, and they're saying, let's fucking make this work. And we're going to make it work. We're going to turn this around. But it's going to cost, it's going to be sweat, and it's going to be blood, and it's going to be tears. But we are going to turn this around. We're not going to let Sweden fail, obviously. The bad thing is that we shouldn't even have to fight about Sweden, because, I mean, Sweden is such a great country. And just if the politicians wouldn't have this, again, genocidal, if that's even a word, politics, then we wouldn't have to have this fight. But I guess Sweden is, as Daniel said before, I think it was Daniel, or maybe it was Jonas, we had peace for too long, and then the culture sadly, it gets kind of weak, and we don't think anything can ever go wrong. But this is our big fight. This is a bigger crisis than World War II was for Sweden. This is the biggest crisis maybe ever for Sweden.
And don't forget that in our veins there are the blood from the Vikings. So when it may take a long time before we wake up, but when we do, we will be really, really angry. Yeah. And I wouldn't like to be Stefan Löfven or any of the other politicians when people really find out what they've done to their beloved country.
Yeah. Exactly.
Every day is a new victory for us now.
Yeah, and I wouldn't want to be Stefan Löfven even today, but and I don't think many people would. But
not even Stefan Löfven, mind you. I would have to be this guy.
But I totally agree with Ingrid there, and the Viking blood is still passing through our veins, and I mean, people are waking up at an increasingly rapid rate in Sweden right now, and. Yeah. I mean, Sweden has been the most extreme country when it comes to cultural Marxism, and the pendulum is about to swing to the other direction, which means it kind of indicates that we might become extreme in the other way as well.
Yeah.
It's probably needed at least, and.
Because Swedes want everybody to think alike. Everybody must think alike, and that's might also be a good thing. We can use this on our favor, because now everybody has been thinking that, well, we love immigrants, we want no borders, we want no nations, there's no Swedish people, yada yada yada. When we can turn this pendulum around, as you said, Daniel, when people start think instead that where there is a Swedish people, we don't like immigration, we don't like maybe socialism, then everybody's going to think that.
Yeah, and then everybody's going to turn around to have, and that would be the consensus thinking in Sweden.
Yeah. Which is, I mean, weird. Politics. Yeah, and we would wish people think for themselves, but fuck it, everything counts. We have to save Sweden now. I mean, this is some.
But we are very, very far from that scenario, aren't we? I mean, I rather see sort of like I mean, we already have a fragmented society in that sense. So this kind of consensus culture or consensus mentality that we're talking about. That's not going to come back. I mean, that's something that was possible in an ethnically homogeneous society. And Sweden was one of the most ethnically homogeneous nations in the world, no doubt about it. But
we sort of again. We could be again. We just have to find a way to make people go back to their own countries.
But I agree, Jonas.
Not only could, we will be again.
But Jonas has a really good point here. We have to stop fantasizing about that Sweden in the 1970s. That Sweden is not coming back. We have to build a new Sweden, a new, stronger, better Sweden. But it's not going to be like the Sweden was in 1960s or 1970s. But it's going to be a great new Sweden. That hopefully is going to be multi-ethnic.
I don't want to incite anyone to violence, especially not on the show like this. But I can't see that happening short of a civil war. To be honest with you all.
No, but
violence is the last thing we want. Yeah, we obviously don't want violence, and nobody wants violence.
No. But
it's gonna be, and we have already seen it, Jonas, as you know. I mean, in the streets, it's violence happening every day. Genocide is happening every day.
It might very well be sort of inevitable. But my prime. What I'm primarily interested in is getting Swedes to recapture some kind of sense of ethnic identity, ethnic cultural identity, which they've been denied.
Yeah.
So
and that's the problem, because this starts with with the school system or with the parents, or I mean, this starts. Whatever changes we do now, we won't see until 10, 20 years maybe, but you have to start somehow. And we have to change, we have to change the whole culture in the schooling system. We have to change, obviously, the politicians. And also, which I like, Daniel, in your book, I know it's an old saying, this meta-politics, but for me it was kind of new. The meta-politics is a really interesting, and we have to understand that it's just not about the election. Politicians is the politics. We don't do that just every 4 years. We do it every day, every day, always. You have to change the way people think about things. And we all can do that. I mean, everybody who listens to this who are in Sweden, and even all Europeans and even all the Americans, we can make a change every day. People all mail me, like 20 times a day. Oh, what can I do? What can I do? And people can make a change every day. Just take the discussion. You don't have to make a big discussion about it. Just, I mean, be positive, be nationalistic, be patriotic, whatever you want to call it. Just take the discussion and, say good things. That might be a low-class way to think about it. But just we can all make a change every day. Don't give up. Don't ever fucking give up, because we're gonna change it. We're gonna win.
Of course, and that's a pretty good kind of description of the.
Yeah, I wish my English was better. Then I could put it in a better way. But I mean,
I thought it was very inspiring.
Yeah, it was. It was awesome.
Absolutely.
And
I mean, people are sad. I mean, especially in Sweden, I call this. I don't even know how you translate it, but it's a folksjukdom. It's like a people syndrome. People are, people feel bad. People are, depressed in Sweden because of immigration.
Exactly, and they have a kind of defeatist perspective. So our greatest challenge is not to provide them with the proper statistics about immigrant crime, because everyone knows this already. That war has already been won. What we need to do is provide them with the courage and the proper motivation to resist.
Yeah, exactly. And this is what I think has been the fault with the alternative media. There's been this sort of assumption that if we provide people with the facts about immigration, they're going to start reacting.
Oh yeah.
That's not the way it works.
And we tried that, didn't we?
Yeah. But it certainly is not the way it works. No. People need inspiration. They need. I wouldn't say ideology, but they certainly need something more than just facts about how shitty things are. And
I think what they need kind of a mythology to believe in, a vision.
I think,
They need a vision. That's a very good word, John. And it's our responsibility to provide them with that vision. And they don't need a proper complete ideology. They just need some sort of ideological foundations to base their actions on.
I mean, people
need a
need
sense
hope
of identity.
Yeah,
identitarianism.
And that is also what I'm trying to convey in my book, by the way. I mean,
for me, you did a really good job doing it, actually.
But you were that's really important, Connor, what you said. I was trying to choose to say it, but you beat me to it. That people need hope. I think that is one of the most important things. That because when people think that there is nothing to do, everything is lost, then they will just go on, like the orchestra on Titanic, just close their eyes and their ears and la la la. Nothing is going to change this. I might as well, be happy drinking until the world falls apart.
Yeah.
And at least they were brave.
Yeah. Yeah, they were. Yeah.
Well, no, Jonas, that's a whole other thing. But I mean, also, Ingrid, as you say, I think the also another equally important thing is that people have to understand that they are a part of a bigger thing. You're not just individual, because that's another big problem in Sweden, that we're all individualists. It's just about me. It's just about me. I want a new plasma TV, or I want new, broadband, or a new computer console. We don't have this sense of that we're together. And the good thing is that we're together. I mean, that's a great thing about nationalism, I think, is that we are together. We all help each other because we are Swedes. Because alone you're nothing. But if you're with your family, you're bigger. Then if you're extended family, then you're even bigger. And if you can feel this, togetherness with the whole Swedish people, that's an amazing thing. We can move mountains. I mean, literally move mountains.
But I mean, to be realist here, Conrad, we've lost that sense of community a long time ago. So,
a long time ago.
But it's coming back. It's coming back.
I hope so. But I mean, the main question, and what we should be discussing, I think, more in our quarters, is how to resuscitate or how to recreate rather that spirit of community.
If we even need to do that, because I mean the crisis we are in right now with the mass immigration and so forth, are kind of recreating that community for us, because it brings Swedish people together.
Yeah, closer.
It strengthens our identity, because we can realize that we are different from all the newly arrived migrants,
and people see that. I mean, take just the public swimming pools. Every day now we read about girls being, groped at or raped in these public swimming pools. And I think that Swedish people now, they're starting to realize that they are different from us.
Yeah.
We never did this to our women. European men, Scandinavian men, they wouldn't rape a girl even if, I mean, they need to have a psychiatric disease or something like that. Yeah. Swedish men, Scandinavian men, European men, they don't like to hurt women.
They don't do it for fun, which...
No, and that is what people see now, that they are laughing when they're doing it. These are the same people who throw stones at women in Afghanistan, for example, and they laugh and they think it's great to do it.
Yeah.
They lack empathy. And I think people are realizing that now. And that makes them, want to be with their own kind, because you don't like people who laugh when they rape women.
And I mean, keeping it positive, it might actually be like in 50 years we're going to look back to 2015 or 16 and thinking, well, that was a really good thing that happened to Sweden, because we needed this crisis to get Sweden back on track. Because when it was a great country, then we fucked it all up. Not we, but let's say just a we. And then we could, come out on the other end stronger than ever before, like, the bird phoenix or whatever mythological creature you want to call it. And just keeping it positive, as you said before, we need hope. And I'm not much for quote. I hate quotes, but there's one quote. I mean, if you think you can do it or you think you can do it, you're right. And it's all about the mindset. I mean, people in Sweden, we were giving up. I mean, in 2013, 14, 15, even myself, me and Ingrid were talking a lot about, oh my God, this is going way bad. But since this is a weird thing, but since the Cologne, everybody know the Cologne sex assaults, people somehow woke up. They needed this huge thing, and these mass rapes of German women, and then people suddenly started, what the fuck is happening? Maybe we should do something about this. And the whole 2016 for me, I mean, it's been almost 2 months now, and it's I just felt positive. I mean, every day. And I heard a lot about this from you, Daniel, and also from you, Ingrid. Something happened the New Year's Eve in 2015, 2016. Finally, the European people are starting to wake up, and I mean, when we all wake up and are united, we can do anything. We could even stop this, invasion of our countries. I'm sure of that.
Of course.
Absolutely.
No one can stop.
They've already done that in Hungary, so we know it's possible.
Yeah.
Of course. And as all of you know, I've always been a strong believer in the power of prophecy, which is a proper term for what you just described, Conrad. In your own way, I guess. But
thank you.
It's perfectly true. I mean, if you don't even believe in your own victory, you're done. You will lose for sure. So what we need to do is to inspire people to start to believe in our inevitable victory.
Yeah, of course. I mean,
I believe in this truly, and I'm trying to make more people believe in that as well. And I think that is one of our big challenges in the next few years.
I agree, but first you have to sort of reinstall some sense of identity into them. Perhaps, and you don't have to sort of over-intellectualize that. That's not what I'm saying. But a lot of Westerners today aren't sure really what they are. I mean, they are victims of the propaganda that's out there. So I think that's our first step to make sure that they can really sort of ascertain or they can feel comfortable with being who they are and what their identity is. So and then we can go on from there. What's going to be the next step?
Yeah, that's true.
Excellent.
And again,
people.
I just maybe I've sort of sound like a broken record here, but I myself would like to heard this from myself for like 2 years ago. We cannot lose. We're not gonna lose. The only thing that can make us lose if we start to think that we are going to lose. That might sound ridiculous or some kind of Buddhist meme, but it's not. I mean, as long as we're together and we're strong, and I want to encourage everybody out there who feels alone, just the most important thing we can do right now is to just make contacts. Try to meet up with people around you who think as you do, because this European or at least Swedish style of living that we're alone, you maybe have contact with your family and that's it. That's not going to work. We have to build big networks so we can cooperate, because otherwise we're going to lose this. And I mean, meeting people who think as you think, that's one of the greatest things we can ever do. So I don't know, Daniel, if you have like a system for this, but we on the podcast, Ingrid Conrad, half of what we do is try to make people meet each other. Have a beer, have a drink together, shake each other's hands. Because that's the most important thing right now. Mm-hmm. To make friends for the war, air quotes.
Sounds very militaristic there, Conrad. I'm actually.
You're offended, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm just scared and
sorry. I know that's
no, but of course we are also doing this. We have been organizing conferences for 7 years, for God's sake, to bring people together. But anyways. We are kind of getting close to the end of this very nice show. We don't do like 4-hour podcasts like you.
Oh, you don't.
But
you're new to this. Yeah, I can understand.
but since you've kind of been talking continuously for quite a while now, I would like to.
And you've managed to say the F word about 100 times, Conrad. So
yeah, well,
that's why I'm in podcast.
Achievement as well.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Ingrid, would you any final words from you before we kind of wrap this up?
No, I think that I had the question yesterday from a Canadian journalist, and he said, what would you say if you could talk to Sweden for 5 years ago with what you know now? What would you have said to your fellow Swedish countrymen 5 years ago? And I said, that's a really, really difficult question. But I think I would say that I would remind them of what a wonderful country Sweden is, and what wonderful people the Swedish people is, and how we made this country so beautiful. And I would tell them, please never forget that. Who made this country so beautiful? Just hang on to that thought, and you will never lose this wonderful country.
That was truly beautifully said, Ingrid. And I think with those words, we will wrap this really awesome podcast up. And I would like to thank all of you, especially Ingrid and Conrad and Jonas, for participating.
Thank you.
And again, if anybody here speaks Swedish who aren't listening to our podcast, please go to ingridochkonrad.se, and that's let's see, I'll do it in Swedish. Ingrid och Conrad, och det är inte och-tecken utan OCH och Conrad med C. ingridochkonrad.se, and they will hear everything that's true about Sweden that the regular journalist won't do.
Jag får väl passa på att tipsa om både motgift.nu och Reconquista Press. Det är motgift.nu och reconquistapress.com. Check it out.
Yeah, very nice, Jonas. Especially the fact that you said it in Swedish and in English language.
Yeah, no, I know. This is what happens to you when you live in an English-speaking environment and speak Swedish at home. You do too. It gets confused. Sorry about that.
It's perfectly fine. We, as usual, will post all the relevant links, including everything that all of you want to kind of plug when we publish this podcast. So both Ingrid, Conrad, and Jonas, send me any links you want us to kind of push, and we'll link to them.
And Daniel, again, thank you for your book. I mean, I've recommended it to lots of people, and I think like 95% of the people have said the same thing, that they felt really, the thing we talked about before, they felt really, yeah, we're going to do this. We're going to win this. It's a real positive book. And I think that's really what we need. So thank you for writing it, and thank you for selling it, I guess.
No, it's a positive thing. Absolutely. It's well written. So
And
I recommend it as well.
Yeah, and if anybody's listening to this who haven't read it, I don't know, shame on you. So just get to it, read it. It's kind of cheap too, so
And
you can afford it.
Yeah, thank you for those kind words from all of you. And by that, I think it's time to end this wonderful podcast. And thank you all for listening. And yeah, tune in a few days, because we're kind of broadcasting twice per week now since we picked up the pace. So yeah, see you soon and take care.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.
Bye.